Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Well, from next Monday, Ghana is expected to undertake its first program review with the IMF. But how is the country going to fare? And how will this assessment, if the country of Ghana passes, impact on the broader recovery of the Ghanaian economy? What would this even mean for businesses as well, if we are able to pass this test? How is this test going to be carried out? And why should we be that worried or excited about the happenings or what will happen with this fund program with respect to this review that the IMF is going to undertake? Well, all these issues wrapped up on PM Express as we also look at the state of the economy on the back of the recent GDP estimates that have been released. How is the economy faring now? Are we indeed seeing signs of recovery, or we have turned the corner? Well, all these things are going to be wrapped up here on PM Express. I engage a financial economist, Professor Lord Mensah, who is joining me here in studio to be one of my analysts or panelists for this show, and also Sechuma Kabwa. He is the chief executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, from the perspective of a financial economist and also the perspective of industry and businesses. How is the economy faring, and why should we care about this IMF program review and how that could help turn things around or turn things backwards? We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about Ghana's first IMF program review and how that could impact on the broader economy and also the recovery and business confidence as well. PM Express Business Edition is brought to you by Syntax Tanks. It is strong and it's tough. And also Alombo Beaters. Experience greatness in every moment. And Ghana AIDS Commission. Of course, these are. Remember that Syntax Tank is no matter how your water needs, Syntax Tanks has it all. Syntax Tanks is the first to introduce double layer tank. And now you can also have as many layers as you want. Now, Syntax Tank is the first to introduce white inner layer tanks in Ghana. And they indeed will now introduce you to the customer experience in terms of this tank and the specs order, and let you order any color that you want, size of preference. And also remember that Syntax Tanks give you all the things that you need in terms of what has the longest warranty, and also the fact that everything that you want, they actually bring it to you for you as a customer. They are our sponsors here on PM Express Business Edition. So whatever your water consumption size or project is, remember that you have to choose Syntax Tank, and this is the option for you as a consumer. This is PM Express Business Edition. Let's look at Ghana's program recovery, IMF first program, and how that could impact on the broader economy. Prof, thank you so much for your time. And it's an interesting time because Monday, the team should be in this weekend. Monday, we are set for this review. But even before we get to the proper review, there has been a GDP numbers release. There is talk about the state of the economy and all the rest. But let me start from you and your perspective in terms of the state of the economy, i.e. tying in the GDP numbers. Growth has slowed in terms of the expansion of what we saw. And also, interestingly, Prof, I don't know whether you've seen it, but apparently there was a revision, as in from the 4.4 in Q1 to 3.3.
Yes, of course. Good evening to our viewers out there.
And also, the fact that we also remember our viewers that Sechuma Kabwa is the chief executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. He's joining this discussion virtually, and I'll be coming to him very soon, Mr. Kabwa, the chief executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. So, interesting developments.
Yes, I mean, it's not surprising because when you look at GDP as a number, economic number, there are inputs to it. And if the inputs are not forthcoming, then obviously there should be a revision. Now we're looking at business spending. We're looking at, consumer spending. And then we're looking at government spending, taking into consideration your net export. Now, effectively, for the past few years, the GDP that we see, the growth that we see has been on government spending. Government spending in the sense that businesses are not, operating as expected. They are not spending as expected. Individuals are also not spending as expected because of what? Liquidity situation in the country. So it's the government who is in business, and you can deduce that from, treasury bill rate that is going up. The way it shows, how desperate government is in need of money, and activities centered around, government operations. Then obviously you should know that we are growing all right, but it's not, a well-distributed growth. Let me put it that way, because we are expecting that we are growing. Government is spending, feeding into the growth. Individuals are spending, feeding into the growth, and then also we have businesses spending, feeding into the growth. But that is not what we see. It's only government that is in.
But is that a good thing? Because, again, for an economy, you want to see an all-round economy. I mean, for instance, you see government spending on military, and that is expanding the economy.
Fantastic.
And that does not give us the real picture.
So that is not actually a good thing. It's not a good thing in a sense that, government spend to place certain, amenities for businesses to thrive on. So we are expecting government to spend on roads, right? We are expecting government to, spend on, things that will create a leverage, kind of for business to, thrive on. So if government is spending, it turns out that probably government is the one employing, right? Because we are expecting that government will lay the foundation. Business picks it up from there, and then the businesses will expand, and from there going, they will what? They will start employing people. But that's not what we see. We see government directly, doing the employment, and all those businesses are not, on the market to employ. So effectively, it tells you that yes, indeed, it's only government that is in business. But at the end of the day, if government is in business, then whom are you going to tax? That is, what will affect your revenue as well. Because effectively, if businesses are expanding and they're employing, then you should have what? More.
And some will say that is why revenue numbers are still
So
not doing well, because therefore hiking the rates is not the answer.
Exactly. So it's not the same people that you've employed that you keep on, taxing. The same people who are going around with the economic activities that you get the excise tax from and all those. So effectively, the hope is that government will be spending, but, it shouldn't go to some extent. Up to a certain level, then it becomes fine, and then businesses takes over.
Can the spending be well targeted, that some will see that the spending would then trigger that economic recovery? Because if it is good, it's support maybe SME, support industry, and it's good that Chimakobo is also that would then trigger that all-round expansion.
That is the ideal situation. And the normal circumstance, government spending should be prioritized. It should be in such a way that it will spur up business activities. But if government is spending and the expenditure is ending up in areas that are not efficient, that are not building up back into the economy, then it becomes, a problem. So usually, government activities, we are not saying that government shouldn't be in business. If you break down, the economic activities, government stays in business up to a certain level. Then individuals in the private sector takes over from there.
From the GDP numbers, again, there have been arguments, and I remember that when we went through the IMF, the last mission when they came to town, and choosing the words carefully of the fund, they said that they have seen signs of recovery. Our finance minister came and said that we have turned the corner. There's a whole debate about it. There are arguments about it. Some will say that the best numbers to make the judgment is what the fiscal service is saying about the economy. From Q1 to Q2, and what we've seen with Q2, can we make an intelligent guess about the direction of the economy, whether indeed it's recovering or signs of recovery, or they've turned around the corner?
You see, usually I don't get too much enthused with GDP numbers.
Why? Some would say that that's the best numbers you can make our judgment.
That's very good. But you see, there are precursors to these numbers. Precursors to these numbers in a sense that if we are saying that GDP has grown, right, we are expecting that before those GDP numbers, investment will be going on. Before the GDP numbers, probably what is the rate of purchase of cement bags? It gives a signal that the economy is about to grow. It gives a signal that individuals are spending. It gives a signal that businesses are what? Spending. Now, how many times have people been buying iron rods? That means the person anticipates a very long-term growth. And as a result of that, they're putting their money into buildings. These are things that we can use to determine, whether indeed the economy is growing. That is why earlier on I made a statement that the economy may be growing, but it is growing on government expenditure, not on business expenditure.
So if we look at the GDP numbers, for you, we shouldn't be so much excited about these numbers because in terms of the recovery, we are still nowhere near recovery.
We've had GDP growth of about 6.1 before.
Yeah.
That was latter part of 2021.
Yeah.
And what did we see? And I always term it as an economy that is hanging. Because you can be growing, you can't grow an economy when employment is lacking. That is something that we may have to look at. Now, we are looking at in the consumer spending. What would trigger consumer spending? It has to do with the job that people will get. They get paid and then they go to the market and spend. So effectively, we are growing all right, but the growth is what? Being on government spending only.
So we should be measured about our expectations.
Exactly.
That things are Let me bring in Mr. Chimakabwa, industry, businesses, and what is on the ground? What is the pulse on the ground? Mr. Chimakabwa, first I will ask you, how is industries doing right now? On the back of your exhibition and all those things, can you help us in terms of gauging the pulse of businesses, industries, and the manufacturing firms?
Well, good evening, George, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, industries. It's been challenging over the past 1.5 years or so that we've had all these challenges in the macroeconomic environment. And I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Industries are still struggling. If you talk to most of them, they will tell you that they are really struggling with their sales. I was serving during the Industry Summit this week. I had a lot of interaction with some of our members, and I've been visiting a lot of companies lately as well to assess the situation. And generally speaking, the general mood is that industries are struggling, sales are down, they are not meeting targets. And I'm not surprised that the data that was released clearly showed a bit of contraction in the industrial sector, especially manufacturing and construction and other areas. So clearly, industry is struggling. And surprisingly, it's not just the items that one could consider luxury goods. Even the essential commodities, basic items that are consumable products that we consume on a daily basis. When you talk to companies producing these items, their sales have dropped compared to the year before and perhaps a couple of years back. So clearly, there's a struggle in the system, and it's clearly determined by the fact that consumer spending has gone down. Consumer spending has gone down because people's purchasing power has gone down. I think that all the debt exchange and so many things that have happened in recent times has affected consumers' ability to buy goods and services. And it's really reflecting on industry's output and industry's expansion. And that's why we are having all these challenges. So generally speaking, industries are not doing as well as expected.
Prof, let me ask you an uninformed and unscientific-based question and my observation. Does it mean that in terms of the consumption that we are seeing, in terms of a casual look, these are imported goods? I walk around even within East Legon, my hood, and I see shopping outlets springing up all over. Melcom and all the rest, you go there, and there's huge consumption of goods from these markets. Is it that it's more of the substitutes, the imported ones? Because if manufacturing firms locally are still not seeing spike in sales or revenue from consumption, where do you draw this line that when you go to the market, you still see a high number of persons out there, shopping outlets springing out all over the place? Help me out with this, my observation.
Well, so if you just look at it on the basis of your personal analysis, not based on data, you may get it wrong. You may see new shops springing up. You may see people probably even queuing to pay money in the shopping malls and all that. And that may be assumed to be growth in numbers in terms of consumption. But that's not how you look at it. You look at it on the basis of actual volumes that have been sold by these companies aggregated, and then computed. That is where you get the real situation. Bear in mind that population is still growing. So generally speaking, there will be a growth in demand. But the growth in demand must match certain expectations and investment. If investment is not in tandem with growth in demand, it means that you're not getting return on your investment, and people that definitely will contract, and it will affect general goods and services. So don't look at it from the fact that when you go to Mokola today, you see so many people shopping and buying, and it means that there has been growth in demand for goods and services. It is not so. The other aspect, as you mentioned, is the fact that how much of the goods we are consuming is being produced from local sources, and how much of it is being imported. I think we are still struggling with local production.
Why?
Local production is still very tough. The desire has been that we should do a lot more of the products we are consuming in this country. But manufacturing is very tough in the country. If you look at the cost of capital today, if policy rate is over 30%, you can imagine how much the lending rate will be for typical manufacturers. And it's relatively easier to buy and sell, because you take money, within 3 months, you turn it around, you pay back, and then you get a bit of your margin, and then you move on. For manufacturing, if you import raw materials, for example, the cycle you will go through, the goods get to you, before the goods get to your port, clear, and then process before you get your money. You're talking of 3-4 month cycle. So it is not that simple. Besides, when it comes to manufacturing, you also have to invest long-term. Medium to long-term capital is virtually lacking. So that's a major constraint. The other fact is that we import a lot of raw materials that we are consuming or we are producing in this country. Sometimes you'll be surprised. Even basic items like fruit juices, when they are producing, sometimes they have to bring goods from outside. So we are not producing enough. The value chains are not working that well. We are not producing enough, and that's affecting manufacturing. Cost of electricity, we've always cited it as one of the challenges. So there are so many challenges that affect the manufacturing sector. The tendency is that even manufacturers sometimes feel like giving up and going to import, because we've created a very good conducive environment for importation. So
and is that happening? And is that happening with some of your members, where they're looking at now importing and packaging these? Because we know some of these firms that used to manufacture here heavily, but now they are just into packaging.
Well, for a typical manufacturer who has invested so much resources, you will not overnight change a decision and change your business model and go and import. Naturally, they won't do so. They will only do so if the situation has gotten so bad that they get to a point where without such importation, they will not survive. They will only use that as a very last resort. But that tendency is there. What some are also doing is that they do a combination of the two. If you look at some of our multinationals, some of the drinks, they produce some locally and then they import some. So at every point in time, they have the two running concurrently. Which one favors them more, they do more of it. And what we should do is that at every point in time, we should try and get a bigger pie of a bigger share of the pie, so that more of the manufacturing will be done locally than importation. And therefore, that's why we are always talking to government to create conducive environment. I know some measures have been taken to help local manufacturing, but we still have a long way to go to support local manufacturing.
So I get from you that the science of recovery is still not impacting on industries anyway.
I wouldn't say we have really reached a stage of recovery. Honestly,
science.
I think what science, well, what we are experiencing, I would call it more of a stability, a seemingly stable macroeconomic environment. If you look at the past, the recent past, inflation was very high. Inflation is still high, but it's dropped a little bit. Exchange rate, you could not even predict. It was so high and it was unpredictable. Today, I think with the IMF intervention, we've seen some reasonable stability in the exchange rate regime. Interest rate is still very high, and still unpredictable. But generally speaking, I think the confidence level has gone up a bit. The BGI has just done its second quarter business barometer report, and there has been a bit of increment in the confidence level, even though we are still not up to the baseline, which is 100. We are still below it. So generally speaking, confidence level is too low, but it's improved a little bit compared to the previous 2 quarters. So the point is that there's some stability that has been experienced, but we need to consolidate that. You move from stability, consolidation of the stability before you get to growth. As for growth and recovery, I don't think we've reached there yet. We are still not out of the woods. For me, the stability is good. We must be able to consolidate it and gradually move to a situation where we can then experience growth. And the data that was released clearly tells the story that indeed we are not doing that well. We've actually shrunk in terms of industry, manufacturing, construction, some of the key sectors. Only the service sector has gone up very significantly, and rightly so, because the telecom sector has gone up and all that. But generally speaking, when it comes to manufacturing, the rail sector, agri and all that, we still have some serious work to do to have full recovery and growth.
I'll get back to you, Mr. Kwabwa, about the recovery and what government should do and what they shouldn't do. And also, the biggest elephant that will be in the room soon, the IMF program. But it's good to come to you, Prof. And this is the pulse on the ground. I mean, first, quick one, surprised about what industry's verdict. And this is not, you don't need a fiscal service data to tell you, this is the pulse on the ground about the real challenges industries are going through.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it shouldn't be something that should surprise us, because I'm
talking about you. I'm not.
All of us. I mean, every Ghanaian, because we know that. I mean, there's no liquidity. I mean, funds flow. I mean, it's quite. I mean, slow now. Cost of fund is still up, and we're using monetary policy to catch up. You know, inflation, which has a way of building up into, you know, I mean, interest rate structures, and as a result of that, assessing funds to. And then also, even if a bank has a fund, I mean, definitely they'll invest in government instrument with treasury bill rate hovering around 30%, you know, thereabout, and then also having an overnight, you know, rate of about 27%. I mean, clearly it shows that funds will be moving towards government instrument without, you know, getting to the businesses and the individuals. So it's not surprising to see, you know, such a thing happen.
I'll be coming back to this cost of funds, treasury bills, which I'm also, a lot of people are worried about the rates and the impact on a possible restructuring. But let's come to the main reason why we are here, the IMF program review. And before we even get into the proper review, there are some who have said that compared to Zambia, the benefits of signing up to a program hasn't it delayed? Some will say the currency has been fairly stable, all right, inflation, but the real benefits that comparing us, and I'm just trying to do a comparison between Ghana and Zambia, and the rallying of their currency and all the things that happen. Why are we not seeing the same thing for country Ghana?
First of all, it has to do with, I mean, at what point did we went to the IMF? Zambia had to, you know, go to IMF back and forth several times before they were able to get, you know, support. And I believe that taught them a very good lesson. At a point in time, they've made an attempt on their own to restructure their economy before even the IMF condition came in, to a point where they were reading a budget on their own, doing about, you know, 8% budget deficit. Ghana's situation is different. First of all, we never accepted that we were in difficulty. As a result of that, we're supposed to go to IMF. Went to IMF, all right, but then the things that we're supposed to do to spare up the effect of, you know, the conditionalities on our economy, we're not doing them, you know, that much. Because if you look at expenditure cut, you know, in as much as in the program, we have indicated, you know, measures that we are going to use to cut down expenditure. I don't see that on the side of our government very well, because the mid-year budget review, when I got disappointed on some of the projects that government still holding on to them, you know, for an economy that is of, you know, such struggling. I wasn't expecting government to keep to Agenda 111, you know, projects that, you know very well that you can rationalize, you know, those projects. And so those expenditure rationalization, which is part of the, what we call it, the program, I was disappointed that I did not. On the revenue side, I think, which is one of the KPIs, you know, government did well, because what was presented to IMF, I mean, the intention was to do around 146 million generation of revenue, which in the mid-year budget review, we're doing around 90-something, million. I mean, clearly we are about 66%, way through revenue generation, halfway, and which is a good signal, But you can't raise the money and then you'll be spending it on, things that does not feed back into the economy immediately, because the economy is under stress, and any economy that is under stress, your expenditure should go into areas that will build up, revenue, as quick as possible.
Prof, can we say, or can we argue that maybe these are the signs of a rushed program or a crash approval, some will say, because it appears that Ghana looking at our states, everything was rushed to get us back quickly on track. And that might be why some would argue that we are not seeing the immediate or the benefits that even signing to a program will come with, even though some would argue that we are seeing the currency being fairly stable, and that could be an impact of the program.
We should appreciate what brought about our visit to IMF. At the point when we're going to IMF, the objective is to go for balance of payment support. And if you are going for balance of payment support, obviously you see stability in your exchange rate.
Okay.
But the pass-through effect of exchange rate stability on the economy is quite slow. Now, we're anticipating that is an economy that is import-driven. And as a result of that, once you get a stable, exchange rate, it will trigger import. And as a result of the economic activities will be created. But at the point where, we are getting this stability in exchange rate, cost of funds is high. And so the businessman will not have that confidence to go to the bank to go and borrow to do that importation. So there's that kind of, sluggish, feed of the benefit into the economy. Other countries may go for the IMF support, like Zambia's issue that you were talking about, may not necessarily for balance of payment support, because Zambia had a lot of, what we call it, extractive, industries, and as a result of that, exportation was still active, and their foreign buffers were quite okay. But then they may go for IMF, support for a different purpose, and that purpose can easily, feed into the economy as expected, providing the necessary liquidity and all those. So our case, we went in for, IMF money, all right, but that money is not something to put into the economy to generate that kind of economic activity that is expected. So, cost of funds are still high, even though we are enjoying that stability. But then you cannot easily go to the bank to have, money, for your business. And so you don't expect that, that trigger of government, having received that first tranche of the 600 million would directly, spare up economic activity at the business and then individual level.
Prof, we'll take a break, and then I'll come back to you. I'll also be getting your thoughts about getting into this proper review. Government is so optimistic that they've met the key performance index to pass this assessment. What is your
I think if you look at what government is supposed to do, the first two tranches is obvious. We're going to get them.
But some will say that the real economy, the first you look at a review of some of these indicators
we will go through,
and look at whether
the indicators and the timelines meant for it. As of September, there were some key benchmarks that we're supposed to meet. And hopefully government has met all of them, and obviously we're going to get a second tranche.
But then some will also say that what should guide this passing this test, and how that could help in recovery of the economy as well in terms of these key performance index. And also, I'll be coming back to AGI President, Chief Executive, and get your thoughts also about how industry is taking this review and how that could aid in the recovery of the economy. This is PM Express Business Edition. As we look at Ghana's first IMF program review that will start from Monday and how that could aid in the recovery of the economy. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at Ghana's first IMF program review that will start on Monday and see our chances of passing this review and what could be the impact of the recovery of Ghana's economy and business confidence. Sechuma Kwabwa is Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, bringing us the thoughts, the views of industry and businesses. That also Professor Lord Mensah, he is a finance economist, telling us the views from a financial economist's thoughts on how things are going to shape up going forward. I've engaged government, I've engaged the Bank of Ghana. They are so confident that they are going to pass this first review of the fund program. I mean, what do you make of that? That's so much confidence.
Yes.
Review thing.
So if I run you through the structural benchmarks that are required, up to September. We are in October, so obviously they're coming to look at what we're supposed to do up to September. The first one I'm looking at, that is end of September, is to publish a strategy in a way to reduce, budget expenditure rigidities. That is, looking at the various, strict funds that government put into, whatever is generated, they put across. And we're looking at District Assembly Common Fund, looking at the Education, Trust Fund. We're looking at the petroleum-related funds, and then we're looking at road fund. Now, this is just a publication of a document. Clearly, if you are supposed to develop a framework to present to IMF that this is what I have done, we're going to look on it to, implement, the rigidity on our expenditure. It's something that you can easily develop. And they're looking at that up to the end of September 2023. And that is also an ongoing process. Not even before we went into the IMF. The second thing they are looking at in September is to publish medium-term, revenue generation. Publication of, medium-term revenue generation strategy. You can easily do that. And then indicate how you can implement them. Also, it's something that you can easily do. Another thing, which is the last but one, is, promote financial stability and bolster financial sector contribution to medium-term growth. That is where I have a problem. Because looking at the continuous call by the government for restructuring of, debt, the financial stability is quite, problematic because anytime you make a call, right, for DDEP, you are sending that uncertainty signal because, in as much as you, the government, you're going to benefit as far as the reduction on your, balance sheet is concerned. Interest payment and all those. The investor feels hurt, for sacrificing that part of his investment. So if you make that call, then obviously, if it's a bank, the bank knows that, okay, fine, whatever investment I have with you, there's a likelihood that you will reduce it. So the investor interest pushes towards short term, and that is why Treasury bill rate, has been going up.
And I'll be coming to the Treasury bills one quickly before we get into the IMF reviews again, because you raised concerns about the fact that if you look at this program and how things are being done, we are really going to pass this program. But even the bit about the debt exchange as well, and this invitation and government claiming that the investors are knocking on its doors, they want to still trade their bonds and all the rest. I think worried by this development because it feeds into the uncertainty.
Yes. And if you have a KPI which indicate that you're supposed to promote financial stability, then that should be a no-go zone area. And you see, I'm surprised at the finance minister's, approach in going about this debt exchange. You see, debt exchange in itself, even though has, advantage of reducing government debt, there's a disadvantage on that side, which you may have to look at the uncertainty that you pose to the investor, changing the investor's expectations. If I'm supposed to have 20% on my investment, and as a result of, debt restructuring, you are now giving me 10%, more so you've prolonged my, maturity, you send shivers into my spine, and at the end of the day, you make me lose appetite for, that kind of long-term investment. That is why the long-term investment, the new structured bonds are not trading. And I know some of the financial institutions may not even accept them as, as a collateral to engage you in anything of that sort. So, the liquidity for that long-term structured bond is problematic. So why do you want people to, go in there? I think, if you want economic recovery, what you do is that you go to the market once, take care of the restructuring, don't go back announcing restructuring again.
The
next level,
rooftop, and all the rest.
The next level after your restructuring is to think about economic recovery. As we speak now, our yield curve is inverted. Long-term rates are lower than what? Short-term. That is, the treasury bills are selling about 3 times the rate of what? The long-term. As a finance minister, as an economic manager, your job is to ensure that the system stays calm to the extent that you win the investor confidence to correct, the yield curve.
Are you worried about the T-bill rates? And there are some who are worried that, listen, looking at the way they are going,
yes,
restructuring is not out of place.
I am.
Because government keeps on assuring, but there's a big difference between the oral assurance and the reality on the ground.
Government can, in a way, right, reduce the T-bill rate.
How?
Yes.
They need money. It's clear that it's a sign of liquidity squeeze.
Let me place in this analysis here. If you look at the investment space, you'll realize that most investors, right, have been leveraging on government instruments all these years. Yeah. So the plan to set up alternative investment, to go into real investment, maybe farming and all those, that plan is not there. And so the investor has the money, all right, but alternative use of the money, apart from a government instrument, is not there. So I believe government can take advantage of that and then issuing new treasury bills, cut down the rate.
Interesting, some would say.
I know the government will meet its target. Yeah. I'm telling you. So we shouldn't look at it, government shouldn't look at it as, the investor has alternative use of its money. If I don't impress them with higher rate, it means they may not give me the money as expected. Those investors are locked, especially the banks.
And they have no option.
They have no option. Most of them will not be interested in the long-term government. And even by so doing, if you're able to press them so hard and you bring the rate down, right, most of them will start chasing the long-term bonds.
Interesting. Let me bring in Sir Chimakabo. And I know that normally it's a mission visit and also a program review. And the IMF would definitely engage industry and businesses. I mean, for you, what should you be telling the fund if they should call you as part of this whole program review? Even though government might be meeting the KPIs for this program, the first review, there are still real issues on the ground. What is the concerns, or what are the concerns of industry, businesses that will be telling the fund to do?
Well, I think what we'll be telling the fund will not be different from what we told them a few months ago when they were in Ghana on a similar discussion. And our points have been that much as their intervention has been very helpful in bringing stability that we are experiencing now, and much as their intervention is still very important to consolidate the stability and then get to a point where we can grow, the intervention should be structured in a way that supports the long-term plan and development of the country. Currently, if you look at the measures that are being taken under the IMF arrangement, there's a lot of tax revenue mobilization measures. How are we mobilizing those taxes? If you look at it critically, it is being taken a lot from the productive sector, and that is not helping the growth of industry, agriculture, and so on and so forth. For example, introducing growth and stability levy of 2.5%, it's actually 1 to 5%. It ranges between 1 to 5%. And when you introduce such a tax system, and this is even on profits before tax, and is paid on quarterly basis, you are virtually taking cash away from the productive sector, which they can actually multiply, expand, and employ more people. So when you do that, you are meeting your revenue target, all right. You are meeting conditions for IMF further disbursement, but what is the effect on the real economy? So we'll tell the IMF that your measures have to be structured in a way that support the productive sector. We've increased VAT rate. What is the objective? Mobilizing more revenue so that the tax revenue target will be met. What is the effect? The effect is that you are taking a lot more of the resources from industry, from productive sector, and in not enabling them to multiply and expand. We've introduced new taxes like SR duties on beverages and so on and so forth. All these are having effect. Another area, we had to do a debt exchange program. What is the effect? Most of the banks that we're dealing with are posting losses. In the process, what is the treasury rate today? Most banks are not lending to the real sector. Interest rate is so high, even if you want to lend, they are reluctant to take because the interest cost is so high. So these measures may meet the immediate requirements and for you to disburse further tranches of the money.
It looks like.
But is that the ultimate objective? So we appreciate the value in helping in the stability. But what is more important is to look at long term. What are the long-term measures? Where are we channeling the resources? How are we protecting industry? How are we linking agri to manufacturing? If IMF is giving us money, we know that it's basically for balance of payment support. But in that process, we will still be spending. Where is government spending more of its resources? Are we channeling to the productive sector? So those are the questions we should be asking, and we'll be engaging the IMF on, because we really need to have a look at all these sectors and then make sure that whatever support we give, whatever intervention we give, is going to support the productive sector, which will help us in the medium to long term. Otherwise, a few years down the line, after the IMF program, we'll come back again because we are still going to depend on imports for virtually everything. We are still not going to expand the space to employ more people. We are still going to be depending on the largesse of development partners, and banks will continue to operate the same way, lending to government. Government is borrowing everything from the system. So we need to look at the whole conundrum of things and make sure that we channel the resources to the right place and support the productive sector for long-term development.
Mr. I'll be coming back to you on leveraging on us passing the test and for businesses. What do you want? I mean, as we try and wrap up, Prof, for you, it is clear, and from what the Bank of Ghana said, from what the Ministry of Finance has said, and even that we are going to pass, how do we leverage on passing this first review? Because from the first review, if we pass, you're going to get disbursement from the World Bank, the donor part, African Development Bank, and all the rest. How do we leverage on passing the first test to fast-track the recovery of the economy and also bring about business confidence as well and investor confidence?
I think it has to do with the way we spend. I mean, government expenditure needs to be prioritized and well prioritized. Now, once we get this support from IMF, World Bank coming in, government should be able to give the signal on the market that I don't need short-term funds again. As a result of that, the banks will have alternatives to lend to individuals. So if government is not borrowing from the short-term market, as they will be getting inflows from external sources and all. I mean, the banks will start lending to individuals. So from where I sit, they should use these funds, right, in a way to spare up government spending and stop, demanding short-term funds from the market.
I'll be coming back to you for your final thought. And Mr. Chimakabo, I mean, as you wrap up in 2 minutes, quick one on moving forward, confidence restoration. And also, least should we forget, I know you've been complaining about interest rates. The Monetary Policy Committee is meeting on Monday to announce their decision whether they're going to tie it or hold it. In 2 minutes, your thoughts on these two key issues.
Well, I think that as for the monetary policy rate, we've always complained about how it's not really impacting on curbing the inflation that we are experiencing. And therefore, it has to be looked at critically. And the effect, though, is that it is always increasing interest rates for borrowers. And that is indeed a problematic situation. So for the next review, we are not expecting that there will be. And I think if you look at most of the indicators, I think we've had some stability. And therefore, to review it further up and increasing the monetary policy rate is not expected. And I don't think that will help a great deal. I think going forward, there's a lot that must be done. And as I indicated earlier, whilst we are trying to solve our immediate short-term challenges, we must think more of the medium to long-term arrangements that will support the productive sector. Otherwise, we'll come back to the IMF. And I think there's a lot we can do. If you look at the exhibition, the summit we had this week, the products that people were exhibiting, the importance of the value chain, the eagerness of the big companies to even procure locally and source their materials. Farmers said, I want to source about 80% of my materials locally, but I'm not getting all of it because we are not producing. How do we ensure that all these value chains work? The rail sector is so critical, and if we arrange it properly, there's no way we cannot do better than we are doing now. So it's all about understanding the arrangements and bringing the key stakeholders together, and then putting our hands on the wheels and having the right strategies that will help us in the long term. I'm very much interested in the long term, because as for the IMF thing, it will come and go. It's within the shortest possible time, have some stability, but beyond the stability, what next? And if you don't start thinking of the long term now, in the near future, we'll have a challenge. Thank you.
Prof, in 2 minutes for you, quickly let me get your thoughts on the MPC, because the IMF thing that the World Bank believes, or the Bank of Ghana believes, that there is still some correction to be done. In a minute, MPC meeting, and then also going forward, another minute about confidence restoration.
Yes, so I'm not expecting them to increase the policy rate, because it has its own way of feeding into the interest rate structures. Again, if we should pass, and I know we're going to pass, we should pass this, IMF, second tranche.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a realization of inflows, and then again we get support from World Bank and other, development partners. That should be used to correct the yield curve. In a way, government should, use that to refresh the market, to indicate or send a signal that I don't need the treasury bill that much that you want to invest in. As a result of that, the rate will start coming down, and businesses can easily have funds to, operate.
Professor Lord Mensah, he is a financial economist, sharing his thoughts on this IMF first review. And it's clear that from even independent analysis, Ghana is going to pass this first review that will take place from next week, and how that could impact on the recovery of the economy. Sechuma Kabua, he's chief executive of the Association of Ghana Industries, sharing the views, the thoughts, and the concerns of industries and the manufacturing firms. I know that the debate will still go in your homes and in your offices about how can we better help in fast-tracking the recovery of the economy and restoring investor and business confidence. My name is George Wiafe. Have a great day. This has been PM Express Business Edition.